Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA Broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, as usual, we've got a phenomenal show lined up for you, all kinds of good information. Let me pull this up here. We are relying more and more on technology here. I know I've expressed my affinity for hard copy and paper in the past, but we've been running a lot of this stuff on the tablet and the computer and phones and such, just because it's so much easier to have all this information in front of you whenever it is on a screen instead of stacks of paper all over the place. So anyway, let's jump right in. We didn't have a busy week the last 2 weeks here, so we only had one show last week. I'm going to get one, or was it 2 weeks ago? I don't know. We've had a little bit of a gap. I'm trying to get it tied up, folks, and get it all tightened up. But you'll have to be patient as we work through this. Been extremely busy. And frankly, the show takes a lot of work to try and put out what I believe to be a quality product. So anyway, let's jump in. This is a Season 2, Episode 5 of the MOA, Make It Out Alive broadcast. We've got crossbow home invasion beatdown. A Mount Marcy freeze tragedy, body positivity backlash, boomers keep booming. Oh my goodness, they just won't stop. Baby boomers, for those of you not savvy with the lingo, and a Snickers gun gym standoff. Gym as in workout gym, the gymnasium, the muscles gym. All right, let's get right into it. I had a couple of brief emails and messages about the... We keep coming back to these First Amendment auditors. I'm not going to explain what they are again. If you haven't listened to earlier shows, you don't know what they are, fine, no big deal. You can find it out by finding these guys all over TikTok, YouTube, social media. But basically, they go around with the camera, and most of them, in my opinion, antagonize the situation so that they get some spicy content between people who think they can't be filmed in public, and which leads up to and including the police officers that show up on the scene, and the auditors, who are just guys who walk around with a camera. In the United States, that is perfectly legal in public. In almost every situation out in public, you can film whatever you can see if you're on public property. And for some reason, some citizens and cops just refuse to accept this reality, and it leads to this endless back and forth of, am I being detained? I know my rights. This is the First Amendment. This is the Fourth Amendment, yada, yada, yada. And to be clear, I support freedom 1,000,000%. There are very, very, very few things in my life, my mind, and my belief system, whatever you want to call it, that are more important to me than freedom. I respect that big time. It's just that it gets to be a little repetitive, with the back and forth between the many of these auditors trying to elicit a response and antagonize the cops and so forth, so they can either get clicks, views, a lawsuit, whatever it is they're after. Okay, well, I don't care, whatever. But what came up in the emails was about the whether being pro-police or anti-police. Number one, let me say this. We're going to keep this brief because I got a lot of stuff to cover in the show today, and we've covered this multiple times in multiple episodes. Number one, there's a difference between law enforcement, the enforcement of our laws as they stand here in the United States or anywhere for that matter, and law enforcement officers, okay? And I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive, but there is a difference, because what happens is the inevitable reality is you're going to have some cops, police officers who are good at their job, and some who are not so good, and some who are downright bad. And that applies to any profession. So the easiest way I can put this is I support law enforcement 100%. I support good cops 100% in the execution of their duties. I don't support bad cops who violate people's rights. If you have a problem with that statement and or you can't differentiate the differences there, then that's your problem. And let me tell you this, I have encountered bad cops, and they have imposed their will on me more than once. And I can tell you right now, it is a horrible feeling. You feel It's just disgusting. I'm not going to waste time talking about the negative. You do not feel good about it at all. And the fact that you get exonerated later on doesn't really help. In the moment when you feel violated is probably the easiest way to put it. So, whatever. But that's what's going on. I'm not going to go through and read more emails because some of these, this is just like politics in this country right now. Things are so polarized, you can only have one person can only have one belief. And if you don't believe that, you by necessity seem to have to believe the antipodal reality or belief of whatever that belief is, meaning you can't just believe to the left. You have to believe, if you don't believe that, you believe 100%, 180 degrees, completely out of phase to the right. There's only one or the other of the extremes. And I just don't believe that represents reality, and that doesn't really represent most of America either. But that's a different story, and so it is what it is. I will say, though, that I kind of keep tabs. I don't watch all of their videos, but I kind of keep tabs on several of these, First Amendment auditors. They put out content pretty regularly on YouTube. It can be a relatively lucrative way to make some money, depending on what income bracket you are in, for just going out there and filming these interactions, because some of them do get pretty spicy. Pepper spray gets deployed. Sometimes people go hands-on. Sometimes cops go hands-on. But there is going to be, and I mentioned this before, and you know what, guys, I'm not trying to portray myself as some sort of genius or some sort of mystic prognosticator. It's easy to have seen this coming. As more and more people become aware of what these First Amendment auditors are doing, it's going to require a certain level of escalation to continue getting these spicy, sassy interactions between the cameramen and the citizens, doing their thing, whether they're at work or whatever else. Now, a lot of them are going to, instead of going up out in public, they used to go to post offices or just walk around in public. Now, they're going to places where people feel, whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. We're talking technically here, where people feel a little more vulnerable. Places like banks, marijuana dispensaries, or whatever the technical term is for that. But places where people feel, medical facilities, where people are going to feel more vulnerable and exposed. Again, whether you believe that or think that's correct or accurate, I don't care. We're using or agree with that. We're just using technical terminology here. People do feel when they go in to buy marijuana or other types of whatever it is they sell, their cannabis, whatever the technical differentiations are state to state, and it does come down sometimes to chemistry. People do feel a little more self-conscious and vulnerable and exposed there, just like they do when they're getting medical treatment and so forth, when they're at banks. And these auditors are taking advantage of that and going to places where people are going to be a little more on heightened alert. And some of them are getting downright, it's insane. They're getting extremely provocative and getting people to, and it's the person's fault. If someone pushes back or whatever else, that's on them. Or if they physically assault someone, they're wrong. That's on them. But they're certainly taking advantage, these auditors are, of the circumstances and the way people feel. And that kind of line, the way people feel about this. And that kind of comes in line with, I got an email about why, if you listen to this show, this broadcast, you would know that it's not really politically correct. I don't sit here and try and get graphic or whatever else, or R-rated, because I'll say this briefly. I think I've mentioned this before on the show, but when I started doing research for the show and trying to improve it and kind of see what the landscape was like in podcasts and others, I listened to a few clips of a bunch of different shows, and a lot of them have become almost like, what used to be referred to as a shock jock. They're just saying shocking material, using as much profanity and talking about as much extreme material, whether it's sexual or pornographic or violent, or just using lots of profane words and terms and topics and so forth to try and grab people's attention. And I understand that, and I'm not criticizing anyone. That's how they do their show. To me, in my mind, you're kind of playing the short game in that situation, because sooner or later you're going to run out of that kind of material, or people are going to get used to it, and it's no longer going to be as shocking and as interesting. But that's you, do whatever you want to do. It's just like comedians. Comedians used to not be able to use certain words on TV or in TV shows and certain situations and stuff. And that, in my opinion, that motivated them to be smarter, to be better, and to develop better material, because they had to get a laugh and they had to, tell a joke or a story in a very PC way, if you will, or a very PG way, and that forced them to really use their minds. And now everybody can just say whatever in the world it is they want and use all the language they want whenever they're on the internet or on a podcast or on a cable channel. And in my opinion, it almost becomes a race to the bottom. You're really kind of just, okay, who can just use the most profane words to talk about the nastiest things over and over and over again? And you're not really elevating the art form, in my opinion. But that's just me. Everybody do what they want. But we tend to go off on these little tangents here. What we were talking about, though, it was the marginalization of boomers. That stands for baby boomers. I mentioned that in my show last week that I didn't really like to use that term. Guys, the term doesn't bother me on its face. What bothers me a little bit is whenever you refer to a group of people, boomers are going to be slightly older or getting into the elderly range now. I was raised to have a great deal of respect for my elders and the elderly, and those are people that typically should be bringing more education, more experience, and more life experience, if you will, to a situation. So you should listen to those folks to a degree. You have to evaluate it against reality and your education, your experiences, and so forth. But the problem is boomers they're so insufferable. I don't know what other word to use for it. They're just insufferable. And that is what we see in a lot of these First Amendment audit situations is these boomer, and it's usually older boomer white males, okay? They don't like somebody videotaping them or filming. I guess videotaping is not really accurate. They're using a phone with digital memory and so forth, or a camera with digital memory. But they don't like, so I'm going to use the term I'm familiar with. They don't like being videotaped. They feel whatever type of way about it. And these are, in my experience of the situations that I've viewed, these are the ones most likely to get violent and go up there and grab a hold of somebody's camera or their phone or whatever and start pushing them or fighting them and whatever else. And guys, that's illegal. The bottom line is, whether or not you like it, if you're walking around in a public place and someone is videotaping you or cameraing you, as some people refer to it, if you don't want to be cameraed, don't be out in public. And that is what's going on. And these boomers, these old white boomer dudes, are the ones that are completely out of control. And I think they've been used to being in control and, quote unquote, in power for so long that they simply cannot handle it when someone defies their orders. And they go bonkers. They go buck wild. And you're seeing a lot of these older dudes in their 60s and 70s getting pepper sprayed and taken down to the ground. And you can tell it's the first time they've had that happen where, they've been subjected to someone else's point of view physically, and they are extremely upset about it. But the bottom line is, we could go on. I got to get moving because we got more good information, better information to cover. They just won't let it go. They won't let go of that control and that power and being able to tell somebody what to do and thinking that if they just keep shouting long enough and hard enough and high enough, that people will do what they say. And it just doesn't work anymore. And, that's just the way that it is. So they're the ones you're seeing a lot that are just really flipping out in these situations. So anyway, the point of that was I was trying to be respectful by not just calling a group of people boomers, but by the same token, these old white boomer dudes especially, they're probably the absolute worst. They just cannot mind their business. And they feel the need to get physically involved with somebody else. And if you are 65 years old and out of shape and you can't even walk steady, and you go get involved physically with some dude who's 25 and in shape and looking for trouble and has pepper spray, guess what? It's probably going to end with you on the ground screaming for help and the cops showing up. So anyway, there you go. My advice to anybody, whether they're a boomer or not, or whether they're a cop or not, when you show up to one of these First Amendment auditor type situations, just ask yourself, is there a crime being committed? If not, just shut up and walk away. It's none of your business, whether you like the way they're exercising your freedom or not. And I wouldn't enjoy it either if I was sitting there on a sidewalk cafe having a nice meal with someone or by myself or whatever, having a coffee, a meal, and someone's videotaping me with a phone. I wouldn't like it either. But if it's legal, it's legal. Shut up and walk away. Trust me, many people have gone viral and look completely stupid in these situations by trying to impose their will on a situation they didn't like and couldn't control, but they had no legal precedence to do so. So there you go. And this is the thing. I read a lot of news. I think I've mentioned this before on the show. Obviously, when you produce a show like this, you're going to go through a lot of different news and other things. And I mentioned this last week, but a number of other times, and I'm not the only one by any means, but the news media has done this thing of just trying to split America right down the middle. And really it boils down to basically if you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump. There's no in between. If you like or agree with anything, and I'm not going to, we keep apolitical in this show. We're politically neutral. We don't endorse any side or any particular belief other than common sense, logic, and and using a rational outlook on life. But if you believe or like anything that Trump says, you're automatically wrong and evil. If you don't condemn anything he says and does, blah, 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 anything, down to the smallest detail, you're automatically wrong and so forth. And most Americans don't want to be put into that situation. It's this bizarre dichotomous classification that the news media, and a lot of it is political, does. And we're seeing this, a lot of social media stars. The easiest way probably to get notoriety right now is to become a political commentary type social media star, because there's just so much interest and so many viewers and so much money involved in swaying people politically. So we completely avoid that on this show. But while I was doing show prep today, I saw this article about the actress Katherine Heigl. You may or may not know who that is. I can't name something. Excuse me. That she's been in, but I know her name and her face. She's a blonde lady, actress. She was in a bunch of X posts, Twitter posts on and because hang on, let me pull my information out. Where is it at? It was so acrimonious and nasty. Okay, she apparently, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but she apparently attended or endorsed or supported some type of animal or dog rescue charity benefit. The benefit happened to be held at Mar-a-Lago, which is, President Donald Trump's property. And I don't know if Trump was involved. I don't know how involved she was in this, but she was there apparently. And people, my impression of her, I couldn't really tell you anything about her beliefs. If I had to guess, my impression would be she was pretty far left-leaning because she's in Hollywood. And from what I've seen of her, I'll admit I find her unlikable from the way I've heard her talk and just her face in general. She hasn't done anything to me personally, and I'm sure she has no idea who I am, but I don't really care for her that much from what I've seen. But she's at a dog rescue benefit or charity benefit of some kind, and happens to be held at Mar-a-Lago. And because of that, it's a property owned and lived in by Trump, people are going after her and just talking about what a piece of garbage she is. And it's like, guys, this is insane. If people cannot learn to draw some type of line, we used to be able to have discussions with people we disagreed with vehemently. And there was a degree of civility and also a degree of compartmentalization. You didn't have to bring every single aspect of all of their beliefs into every conversation. But that's this thing with this dichotomous type of outlook or classification that we have. You can only be one or the other. That the media is trying to push. Either you're somehow involved with or affiliated with Trump, and you're all evil and all bad if you believe. If Trump says the sky is blue and you agree with that, you're affiliated with MAGA, the Make America Great Again movement type of thing, or you're whatever else is left. And if you are on the other side of that, you believe all of the bizarre, insane things that some of these people believe. So it's just not that simple. That's not a real human experience. So anyway, we need to get moving. Let me get a quick sip, but what a mess. Okay, for our first story, we go to Canada. Now, Canada has been in the news a bunch. Canada, we talked last episode about how they really made themselves look like fools, a lot of these folks in Canada on social media, because the U.S. men's and women's team won gold in Olympic gold in hockey in America. Excuse me. And typically that's Canadian territory. And the men beat the Canadian team, I believe. Again, I don't follow sports, but that's what's going on. I believe they beat the Canadian team in hockey, men's hockey, for gold. I don't know who the women defeated, but I believe they won gold as well. So Canada has just been, and this is not a United States versus Canada thing. We're politically neutral here, but Canada has been all over the news and social media recently. They have been taking L after L after L. L is for loss. Okay. And they were so mad and petulant that they did not win gold, and the USA won gold in hockey, which, is their sport basically. And probably the fact that it was just the U.S. and the U.S. has been kind of, slapping them up recently, like a younger brother or sister, younger sibling. They were such poor sports. Again, I'm not a sports person. I don't really care, but it was embarrassing the way they were sitting here. Oh, well, the better team didn't win. This is the Canadian people on social media speaking, and I'm sure there were some ringers in there and some bots and so forth. But they were like, the best team didn't win. The U.S. just they got lucky. Whatever. Blah blah blah. Guys, after a loss, that is such an unflattering look. Be a good winner and a good loser, period. Okay, let's move back though. Canada takes another huge L here. Man accused of assaulting alleged home intruder in high-profile Lindsay, Ontario case. I'm going to read the 2 paragraphs here and then we'll get into it briefly. We got to move on. A home invasion case in Ontario has drawn attention after prosecutors dropped serious charges against a man who violently defended himself inside his own apartment. Pay attention, that's important. The man was in his own home. Jeremy David McDonald, a 44-year-old resident of Lindsay, Ontario, had been facing charges of aggravated assault and assault with a weapon following a confrontation on August 18, 2025. Now, who is Jeremy McDonald in this situation? In the United States, or in any sane, rational situation or place in the world, we would call him the victim, okay? He's in his own home, his apartment, when, according to reports, a man broke into McDonald's apartment armed with a crossbow, creating a, quote, dangerous and rapidly escalating situation. No kidding, Sherlock. Oh my gosh. During the struggle that followed, McDonald severely injured the intruder. Congratulations, Mr. McDonald, for doing what any sane, normal human being would have done anywhere except apparently Canada. The case took a turn on February 26, 2026, when prosecutors withdrew the charges against McDonald. That's right, folks. I don't know if the alleged intruder was charged, but Mr. McDonald, the, in my opinion, victim in this situation, the man who was in his own home when he was attacked by a home invasionist with a crossbow, was charged. Prosecutors withdrew the charges. The Crown, which I guess is what they refer to as their legal apparatus or whatever, I don't know. The Crown, it's Canada, who cares, right? The Crown stated that there was, quote, no reasonable prospect of conviction, end quote, a legal standard meaning the available evidence was unlikely to lead to a guilty verdict at trial. So the way I look at that, and the way I hear is they didn't drop the charges against this poor dude who's defending his own domicile because, oh yeah, he was just doing what any sane human being would do. They dropped charges because there was, quote, no reasonable prospect of conviction, end quote. They didn't think they could secure the conviction, so they let it go. Canada, what is going on up there? What are you doing? Now, is that the way it went down? I have no idea. But according to the article, again, the decision suggests prosecutors believe McDonald's actions could, quote, plausibly fall within Canada's self-defense laws, end quote, which allow people to use reasonable force to protect themselves when faced with an immediate threat. If a guy home invasioning you in your own home with a crossbow doesn't fall into the category, the parameters of an immediate threat to which you could, quote, use reasonable force to defend yourself, what in the world does it take to qualify for reasonable force to protect yourself in Canada? Guys, what are you doing in Canada? Can you believe this poor guy? What's Jeremy David McDonald? A 44, this guy, he's just in his home, apparently. I don't know. The different articles didn't really get into it. I'm sure there are probably some more information out there. He's in his home. I don't know if it's the middle of the night or what. Some dude breaks in with a crossbow. That is an oddly specific weapon, although it may be because of the more difficult availability or the difficult to procure firearms in Canada as opposed to some place like the U.S. where, admittedly, firearms are relatively easy to get, especially if you're legal. You know, you have a good legal record, criminal record. But some dude home invasions him with a crossbow, and they arrested him, I guess, in addition to the home invasioner in this, which they don't list his name. Jeremy David McDonald is getting famous for all the wrong reasons when he was minding his own business, apparently in his own home. So Canada is... This is why it's so fun to clown Canada, because they're so out of control in the wrong way. And there's so many of these stories coming out, people getting arrested for saying words or hurting people or offending people in some of these countries. Man, out of control. They can make fun of the U.S. all they want, and that's fine. And there are plenty of problems here in the U.S. and other countries around the world. But my goodness. Remember, folks, let me just move on. One word. Freedom. And it is not perfect here in the U.S. We have tremendous problems. But holy smoke, can you imagine getting arrested because you defended yourself in your own home or apartment, whatever, from a home invasioner dude with a crossbow? Holy crap. Okay, we got to move on to our next story. We're going to run out of time. This one we're going to keep kind of brief. This comes to us out of New York. A New Jersey hiker freezes to death while hiking in New York's highest peak, despite calling 911 for help. This story comes to us via the New York Post. An avid New Jersey outdoor buff slipped off. Okay, let's just get to it. Brianna Moore, 21, young gal. She apparently hikes and takes pictures of her hikes and her adventures with her dog, and posts them to her Instagram account. Apparently, she had some kind of sizable following on social media. And that's why this made the news. Unfortunately, it's a tragic, horrible story. I read various versions of this article on several different news sources. None of them were extremely clear, but apparently she somehow slipped off of a trail, and I don't know if she was injured and unable to continue or what, but she died. She froze to death. Horrible way to go. I guess maybe not the worst way, but nonetheless, not a good way to go. Very, very sorry. Condolences to her family and friends and so forth. But she called 911 while clinging to the side of Mount Marcy in the Adirondacks at 3 p.m. Thursday. This is a couple weeks ago, according to police. Rescuers couldn't find her until after 9 p.m., at which point she had died of hypothermia, New York State Police said. Temperatures in Keene, New York, where the mountain is located, ranged from -8, that's -8 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit that day, according to AccuWeather. That is very, very cold. 20 degrees, not too bad, depending on how you're dressed and prepared. -8 degrees is going to get your attention very, very quickly. I looked up some of her pictures on her social media account. Who knows what was, how well she was prepared. She had her dog with her. It says her loyal dog was found with her uninjured. Apparently he was waiting by her side, or she. I don't know, it doesn't designate in the articles that I saw. She was on a 5,300-foot peak. The forest rangers frantically searched for her by snowmobile while police looked for her via helicopter, but low cloud cover prevented officers from seeing her by chopper. She had some awesome pictures on her social media accounts. Pretty young gal, and was she 21. I mean, life hadn't even started yet, right? If you've lived life at all, life hasn't even started at age 21. And it's gone. I don't know exactly what she could have done differently or better. It sounds like they were aware of her situation very quickly. So it's not as though, letting someone know where you were going to be or whatever else may or may not have helped. Again, I don't know the exact particulars, but overall, just a tragic situation. Very sorry for her and her family. But highlights the the danger of the outdoors. And we've talked about that's one of the recurring themes of the MOA, the Make It Out Alive broadcast. We talk about how dangerous it can be outdoor. You know, they use the old expression. I don't know who coined this phrase. I read it online somewhere. I can't take credit for it. If you know who it is, let me know. But somebody said, if you're going to get frisky with Mother Nature, you better bring protection. And that's what, we find that is the common underlying theme in a lot of these situations where people die under seemingly innocuous situations and circumstances. It just takes a small mistake, guys, a very simple mistake, and it can become deadly very quickly. Very quickly. So anyway, real shame. We're going to go into some other stuff on that, but we got to keep moving. So we'll go ahead to the next story. Now, the reason I bring this up, let me get a quick sip here first. My throat's getting a little dry. Okay. This story I noticed while I was researching the one on Breonna Moore, the unfortunate young lady who died in New Jersey, we just discussed a moment ago. Okay, let me pull up my notes here. Where are we at? There we go. Okay. Here's the headline. This was it was a byline. It was not a byline, but it was a sidebar link on this story. So I couldn't help but link it to click it. Former body positivity influencer says the movement became, quote, radical, admits feeling brainwashed. New York Post. Now, for those of you, I'm going to save you some time. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We'll go over some of the highlights here briefly. The body positivity movement is basically where a bunch of gigantic, enormous fat people are trying to normalize being morbidly obese and convince the rest of the world that, especially for females, because let me put it like this, not many people want to see a morbidly obese female, but no one wants to see a morbidly obese man. Okay. There is no situation on earth where you're going to look at a morbidly obese man and be like, oh yeah, that's body positivity. That's attractive. It's disgusting. Nobody wants to see a morbidly obese man. End of story. Moving on. Females are just, in general, in my opinion, naturally more attractive to look at than men. At least to me. You do whatever you want to do, folks. But this body positivity movement. So this lady, let's get it. Former body positivity influencer Gabriella Lascano spoke to the New York Times in an article published Monday. This article comes to us from the New York Post, by the way, different organization or newspaper or whatever entity. In an article published Monday about her journey from, quote unquote, championing the body positivity movement to renouncing it for pushing an unhealthy lifestyle. Gee, who would have thought that being morbidly obese was unhealthy? She described her beginning her online career in 2010, adding that while she never planned on becoming an, quote unquote, influencer, she began intentionally pushing the message to, quote, love yourself at any size, end quote, after receiving support from other, quote unquote, plus size women, aka fat broads. Over time, however, she found that she was gaining more and more weight and became unable to do activities she enjoyed, such as traveling or riding roller coasters or, I don't know, maybe fitting into a car seat. May or may not be true. I don't know, folks. That's just my... Quote, some days I would look at photos and not even recognize myself, end quote, Lascano said. I'm only 5 feet tall, and at my heaviest, I was close to 400 pounds. Oh my God. Let me reread that. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm only 5 feet tall, Lascano said, allegedly, quote unquote, whatever. I'm only 5 feet tall, and at my heaviest, I was close to 400 pounds. Guys, the first thing I thought of whenever I read this was Refrigerator Perry. For those of you who are boomers and probably even some Gen X, you're going to recognize that name, Refrigerator Perry. Let me just refresh your memory. William the Refrigerator Perry was a professional football player known for his massive physical presence, typically weighing between 335 and 375 pounds during his peak playing career while standing 6 feet 2 inches tall. He earned his famous nickname as a freshman at Clemson University in 1981 when he and teammate Ray Brown attempted to squeeze into an elevator together while carrying laundry. Finding barely enough room to breathe, Brown reportedly remarked, "Man, you're about as big as a refrigerator." Okay, now this is a professional football player who's 6 feet 2 inches tall and was known as the refrigerator when he weighed between 335 and 375 pounds. This gal, and I'm not trying to pick on her, I don't have a problem with her. She realized the error of her ways and she realized it was going on an unhealthy path and she corrected course. So I respect that. I really do. I got no problem with her. I'm not trying to make fun of her. It's the movement in itself that I'm trying to highlight is how insane it is. Now remember, Refrigerator Perry, an NFL lineman who was 6 feet 2 and 335 to 375 pounds. This gal was only 5 feet tall, almost a foot and a half shorter. Okay. And at her heaviest was close to 400 pounds. She was shorter and heavier than Refrigerator Perry, okay? This is out of control, guys. The people that go along with this because they don't want to be considered offensive or unpolitically correct or whatever in the world the term they use for the hate speech they're trying to label this as this week, it's got to stop, man. You can sit here and believe whatever you want. But if you want to believe this is healthy or positive, you need help. Let me put it like that. I got to keep this PC and PG because this is a radio show, and I respect the radio station. They've been very good to me. So let's just leave it at that. But to continue, quote, "I started to wonder if loving myself at any size had become an excuse to ignore how big I was getting. I felt like I saw myself being brainwashed, essentially. Meanwhile, the language around body positivity began sounding more extreme online. I don't know how you can get more extreme than 5 foot 400 pounds as a female, but apparently it did. She eventually saw the body positivity community become hostile toward weight loss and exercise, even for health purposes, the article says, which led to her turning on the movement." As the body positivity community became more radical, I was scared to say the wrong thing, so I stayed silent. Then my friend died. She was a body positivity influencer who founded the world's first plus-size salon, she says. I'm not laughing at the death. This is insane. What in the world is a plus-size salon? Do you got to be fat to get your hair done? Or is it nails or what? I don't know. The point is this version of feminism or whatever in the world they're referring to this stuff as or calling it is out of control. And I'll tell you this transfers over in the females and the women and even the men. It's going to primarily fall on the women. The women that are falling for this stuff, guys, you're losing it, man. You are on a losing battle. It's not going to play out the way you think it is. It's to the point now, I've mentioned this before, I believe, I don't know. I talk a lot. Who knows? Who cares, right? But this is my show. We talk about what I want to talk about. It's to the point now, I was raised in a rural Midwest community to be very respectful of everyone, really. So I hold doors, especially for women, help women, especially if they have something to pick up or load their vehicle or whatever else, like at the grocery store. But it's to the point now where a lot of these women act offended if you just hold the door or offer to help or are just friendly. Hey, how you doing? Pardon me, ma'am. How may I help you? Or stuff like that. So what I do being having the contrarian bent that I occasionally have in my personality, I'll fight back a little bit. And if I hold the door for someone, a female, or offer to help them with, picking up their groceries or just whatever it is, in any way, do something that's considered traditionally masculine, and they give me that look like, oh, you're a disgusting creep, or you might be a convicted sex offender, I hit back with a couple of snappy little lines, and it totally just shuts them down. One of my favorites is like if I hold a door for them and they don't say thank you, or you help them, pick up their groceries or catch their, whatever it is, catch their dog that escaped. That's happened to me before in grocery store parking lots. And they look at you like you're some kind of a sex offender. If you go, oh, okay, you all right? You need any help? I cannot tell you, I can't count on two hands the number of people I've asked in the last 6 months that I've seen with broken down vehicles if they need any help. And the vast majority have looked at me like I'm some kind of pedophile for simply walking up and saying, hey, can I help you out or whatever else, because it happens to be women. So what I'll do is I'll say, wow, you... I feel almost guilty sharing, but this is if you want to get them back and get your get back, as they say. This is what you do. I'll tell them like, "Wow, you've got a really large forehead. That's a sign of beauty in some cultures, just not this one." What the trick is, the secret is, you got to say wow and then make it apparent that you're talking about some sort of physical attribute, because American women, that will draw and capture their attention 99% of the time. If they think you're going to give them a compliment on their physical attributes, that will capture their attention. So I'll be like, wow, you've got a really large forehead. That's a sign of beauty in some cultures, just not this one. Or I'll go, wow, those are some great dentures. You can hardly tell unless you look. And my other third go-to is, again, using the word wow, because that, for some reason, saying the word wow like absolutely enthralls them. I go, wow, you could be a model for plus size stuff. And I don't like to be disrespectful to women, but when these women treat you like you're some kind of a creep or sleazebag for just trying to be helpful, like holding a door open or giving them a compliment, oh, thank you, or, oh, that was a nice thing to say, or something like that, it gets to the point where, like, you know what, okay, you want to sit here and make me feel bad, guess what, you're going to get a little taste too. So... there you go. My favorite, though, honestly, out of all of them, is the one that really draws me in. I go, wow, you've got a really large forehead. That's a sign of beauty in some cultures, just not this one. Try it and let me know what your results are. You got any you got any emails you want to send us or feedback, send it to info@gearconvoy.com. Okay. Where are we at on time? We got to go. Let me get a sip in my throat. All right. All right, folks, it's time for the MOA Chaos Report, where someone's bad decisions give you a good laugh. Real news, real hard, real funny. Some elements modified for extra laughs. This article comes to us from CBS 12. King-size cover-up. Florida gym goer points gun at man. Later claims it was a Snickers. Again, we head down to the great state of Florida. Altamont Springs. A Florida man faces felony charges after allegedly pulling a gun during a gym dispute, later claiming the weapon was actually a king-size Snickers bar. Authorities say the 45-year-old man approached a group of men using weights at the Crunch Fitness in Altamont Springs gym on Tuesday and made comments about their workout. Yo, what's up? That's a really weak-looking... You're a real stinking... You know that? The situation reportedly escalated into an argument, with one man walking away to use equipment in another area. But the aggressor allegedly followed him, repeatedly asking him if he had a problem, according to reports obtained by WESH. Yo, you got some kind of with a when I talk to you? The victim allegedly told him that he was aggressive and needed to stop. That's when the victim said the aggressor pulled a gun and pointed it at his face. Do you see what this is? How about you want to put that? Oh, you know what I'm talking about when I... Court documents reveal the victim ran in fear for his life. That puts people on edge. You know, you don't know who's next to you in the gym anymore. A regular Crunch Fitness told WESH. You don't know who you're walking next to or what's on their mind or what they're going to do. When someone walks up and sticks a gun in your face and says, hey, I'm going to... And then... Do you know what I'm talking about? When officers with the Altamont Springs Police Department stopped The man, he allegedly claimed the gun was a king-size Snickers bar. He eventually confessed that the gun was fake and that he only pulled it out to scare others. Whether it was fake or not is yet to be determined because a gun has not been recovered. The aggressor now faces attempted homicide charges, among others. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode. Remember, don't wait until you have an emergency to prepare for it. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.